AITA for ignoring my dad's birthday and not getting him a gift. Story 1. Not the a-hole. Ever since I 16M was a little kid, I got my dad a birthday gift with the help of my surrogate grandparents. My mom died when I was 2, so it was me and Dad for a lot of years. Dad and I used to be really close. Then when I was 10, he met Jen, and he met her kids who were 18 months and 3 years old at the time. Dad and Jen fell in love pretty fast, and they moved in together a few months after they met. Jen was divorced and her kids' dad wasn't around. So my dad decided he needed to step up and be a good dad to them. He told me things would change, but I was still his son and he'd make time for me. But ever since he decided Jen's kids were going to be his, he let me down a lot. It started with us having plans and him having to cancel because one of the kids was sick. Then it was they had a play or a game he needed to be there for. Or it was they had decided to have one of the kids' birthday parties early and Dad needed to be there. But he wasn't doing the same for me. When I got sick, he'd send me to my grandparents or expect me to stay with Jen while he did something with Jen's kids. If I had something on, he'd apologize for missing it and would say he had plans with Jen's kids. Oh, and the big thing that pisses me off is for the last 6 years, almost he gives Jen's kids credit and thanks them too when I buy him a gift. Even when I tell him it's from only me. He talks about it being teamwork to get him that. I tried talking to Dad. He admitted he let me down. He told me he was afraid of Jen's kids feeling rejected if he were to cancel with them for me. That he didn't want them to feel like he loved me more when all 3 of us are equal. I told him he cares more about them, and he asked how I could say that after 10 years of having all his attention. He asked me to think about the kids whose bio dad walked out on them and who could feel really unwanted if he were to let them down. I told him I didn't care about them or their feelings or whether they feel loved and wanted. I told him I don't feel loved and wanted. I feel resentful of the fact he gives them credit for my gifts, he cancels on me for them, but won't give the same back. He told me he can't change it, but he can try to let me down less. I told him he was putting them ahead of me and I told him I was done. He can enjoy having 2 kids instead of 3. He didn't think I would actually follow through. This big talk happened back in April. Dad's birthday was yesterday and I didn't join in on any of the celebrations and I got him nothing. I didn't even say happy birthday. I knew they were going out for the day, but I didn't go and I knew ahead of time. When they got home, Dad was upset because I was on the couch playing video games. He told me he'd missed me. Jen told me I had really hurt my dad and was behaving like a child instead of a 16-year-old. AITA? First comment. If I understand the timeline, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen's elder child is pretty much as old as you were when Jen and your dad met. Ask your dad, does he imagine treating her kid the same way he treated you when you were 10? Ditching him constantly for other things? Expecting him to display maturity? I don't know the extent of the emotional neglect, and whether it justifies shunning him entirely, that's for you to decide, but the fact is you expressed your feelings multiple times and he chose to ignore it. As a parent, you can't put the emotional work on a 16-year-old. It's not fair, and it's not your job to salvage the relationship. I'm sure your dad genuinely loves you, but it's not enough, and he has to learn the consequences. Second comment. NTA. So it took him 4 months to become disappointed because it was his birthday? That says it all. I hope he was hurt enough to make a change. Glad you followed through and wishing you so much happiness and love for the future. You may have to create your own chosen family, but you'll get there. Third comment. TA, ask him how it is going to feel when you don't invite him to your big life events because he lets you down so often you wouldn't expect him to show even eye if you wanted him there. Also, he isn't hurt. He is just realizing his actions have consequences and doesn't like it. Story 2. AITA for telling my son that the girl he likes has a boyfriend? My son Caleb is 17 and just started his junior year of high school. He's autistic and has successfully reintegrated back into the general ed student body after being in special ed since he was in elementary school. We're very proud of him as despite his challenges, he's a smart kid. He's known Kelsey 16F since his freshman year. She's also a junior. She's a very nice and very pretty girl, and Caleb has always referred to Kelsey as his girlfriend. While I know Kelsey enjoys hanging out with Caleb, I can tell that she doesn't feel the same way about him. Shortly after the school year began, Kelsey confided in me that she has a boyfriend whom she began dating earlier this summer. He's a classmate of Caleb's and they get along okay, but at the same time they're not friends who hang out together outside of school. Kelsey has told me that she doesn't know how to tell Caleb that she has a boyfriend because she still wants to be his friend, but she worries that things might be awkward between Caleb and her boyfriend. But she also worries that Caleb will be very hurt once she tells him. I told her that I'd talk to him. She said that she wanted to be the one to tell him, but I felt like it would be better if I were the one to tell him. So the other day I sat Caleb down and explained that I knew he liked Kelsey, but she doesn't think of him as anything more than a friend, that she had a boyfriend and said who he was, and that he was making both of them uncomfortable and needed to respect their boundaries. Caleb didn't react well to this at all. The next day Caleb told me that he and Kelsey had a big argument because Kelsey never told him that she had a boyfriend and that he didn't know he was making them uncomfortable and wished she would have told him. Caleb is mad at her for lying to him. I explained that she wasn't lying, but she wasn't sure how to tell him. Later that day, Kelsey called me and berated me, saying that I had no right to tell Caleb because she was planning to, and that she never said anything about Caleb making them uncomfortable or violating their boundaries because he wasn't. But she told me that I was violating her boundaries by telling Caleb something that wasn't my place to tell him, and that I had gotten a lot of details incorrect. Now Caleb is mad at Kelsey and not talking to her. Kelsey is telling me that the whole thing was a misunderstanding and that she still wants to be his friend, and meanwhile her boyfriend doesn't even understand why Caleb is so upset. Her parents are also angry at me and say that I ruined what was once a very nice friendship. I will admit that I did tell Caleb that Kelsey felt uncomfortable and that he needed to respect her boundaries, but I felt like it was the only way to make Caleb understand that he could not continue calling Kelsey his girlfriend. My husband says I did the right thing, and that Caleb needs to forget about Kelsey and focus on his schoolwork, but I'm not sure that I did the right thing. First comment. AITA. She said that she wanted to be the one to tell him, but I felt like it would be better if I were the one to tell him. Kelsey has a right to be the person to tell Caleb. They have a friendship and she felt she owed it to him, to be honest. I get that you're his mom and want to protect him, but what you're actually doing is hindering him from growing and feeling things without it being sugar-coated and softening the blow as a mom. You can't keep doing this because you're actually stopping your son for learning to cope and deal with situations on his own. You also said shit that Kelsey never said, and that's awful. Also, it wasn't you or your husband's call for Caleb to forget about Kelsey. You do not get to edit and curate his life like he's an invalid. Second comment. AITA, and not as gently as others are offering. You betrayed Kelsey's trust and went behind her back to tell your son, then you double backflip to betray more trust by lying about Kelsey feeling uncomfortable. You made this whole big mess for no reason. I could understand if you had said something to Caleb first to prepare him, but you lied to him in a way that made him feel worse than he would have. Why cause so much drama? Third comment. AITA, it sounds like you did get the details incorrect. If Caleb didn't even know she had a boyfriend, how could he have been making them uncomfortable? How can he respect boundaries if he didn't know there were any? She told you she wanted to deal with this. They are the friends, not you. You should have just stepped out and let them work it out. He isn't going to survive in this world on his own if he doesn't experience difficult things. You made this worse. Story 3. AITA for calling out my family for keeping the truth from me for years? Not the a-hole. In March, I 17M learned that my mom isn't my bio mom but is my stepmom, and that my brother and sister are my step-siblings. I was only 1 when my parents got married, so I don't remember a time before, and my biological mom doesn't want to know me, which means I never grew up with 2 moms or anything. I always assumed I was their bio kid. They basically said I was. I thought my siblings were blood siblings too. I knew they didn't call dad dad, so I figured half siblings, but still siblings. Which is why growing up I was so confused about why they hated me. They would get so mad at me for talking to them or breathing near them. They used to fight to not sit next to me at dinner and fight over who'd sit next to me in the car. They'd say I wasn't their brother but never answered why. Only answer I'd get was I was pathetic and I was gross. They would kick me out of the TV and game room because I wasn't allowed in there if they wanted to do something. I was so confused. I looked up to them and so badly wanted them to be like older siblings my friends had or like my friends were with younger siblings. I cried about it. I asked my parents why. I asked grandparents and extended family why. Nobody ever told me the truth. I also never got why they hated Dad so much, though they never seemed to hate him as much as me. It did a number on younger me. I still have some hang-ups from wanting my siblings to love me and being rejected every time and being treated like they would catch something from sitting next to me. I started to question stuff when I needed my birth certificate and my parents wanted to bring it to school for me. So I searched it out and found it and saw Dad's name but not Mom's on there. I asked my parents. They admitted I was my mom's stepson and my sibling's stepbrother. And they hadn't liked that and hadn't liked my dad. They said they had wanted me to love them so it would soften their hearts and let them accept me as a brother. My family didn't like me saying my parents had lied and being mad about it. They think I'm being unfair. They mentioned it a few times. But when they were over at our house a few days ago, I kinda lost it and called them out for lying too and keeping the truth from me. I told them everyone left me in the dark and looking like an idiot about what my step-siblings had meant. They said I expect too much from them. AITA, first comment. NTA. How do you know your biological mother doesn't want to know you? Is that what they told you? And why the hell did your stepmom not discipline her children? That is abhorrent behavior.